Today we're going to learn about subject and object pronouns and how we use them in questions, especially when we ask about the subject or the object of a sentence. This is very important for basic communication. For example, when you meet new people, ask questions, or have simple conversations. Let's start with the difference between subject pronouns and object pronouns. Subject pronouns are the people or things that do the action, like I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. For example, she is my friend, or they are at home. Object pronouns are the people or things that receive the action, like me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. For example, she likes me or I see them. So remember, the subject does the action and the object receives it. Now let's look at questions, because the structure changes depending on what we ask. First, we have subject questions. These are questions where we ask about the subject of the verb. In this case, we do not need an auxiliary verb like do or does. We usually use who or what, for example, who likes Jane or who is talking. In these questions, who is the subject? The answers are simple, for example, Phil likes Jane or she is talking. So in subject questions, we don't use do, does, and the word order is the same as in a normal sentence. Now let's look at object questions. These are questions where we ask about the object of the verb. In this case, we need an auxiliary verb. For example, who does Jane like or what do you want? Here, Jane and you are the subjects, and we use does or do to form the question. The answer is, for example, Jane likes Phil or I want a drink. So remember, in object questions, we use an auxiliary verb and the normal question structure. We also use the verb to be in many questions. For example, where are you, or who is that, or when was the meeting? In these cases, the verb to be comes before the subject. For example, are you ready, or is he your brother? These are very common questions when we meet people or talk about daily situations. We can also use question words with auxiliary verbs like do, does, did, will, or have. For example, where are they going, or who did you visit, or what will you do? In these questions, we follow this structure: question word plus auxiliary verb plus subject plus main verb. For example, why have they left, or when will we arrive? This structure is very useful for asking about plans, past actions, or future events. Let's connect this to introductions and manners, because we use these questions when we speak with other people. For example, when you meet someone, you can say, "How are you?" or "Who is that?" or "Where are you from?" You can also respond politely with expressions like "Thank you," "You're welcome," or "Nice to meet you." If you don't understand, you can say "Pardon" or "Excuse me." These expressions are very important for polite communication. To finish, remember that subject pronouns do the action and object pronouns receive the action, and that the structure of a question changes depending on what you are asking. Practice these forms when you speak, especially in simple conversations, and your English will become clearer and more natural.